Hindi nga po yung batas po na binabanggit natin na atin pong ipinasa last year, inalis niya na po yung KIG. Wala na po roon eh. I ask the staff to please show the first map. Mr. President, hindi ba lalaki ng konti? Palakin mo. Mr. President, I'm trying to show the official map of the South China Sea as published by the International Hydrographic Organization in S-23 or Limits of Oceans and Seas. We are not supposed to defend the entire South China Sea, Mr. President.
No, Mr. President. Only our exclusive, until our
Only the portion of the West Philippine Sea.
Yes, Mr. President. Until the exclusive economic zone. And also in the other side, Mr. President.
Hindi, doon muna tayo sa
seaboard,
West,
Mr. President.
sa West Philippine Sea muna tayo. Isa-isa lang, boss. Mahirap ang kalaban. Can you tell me, Mr. President, exactly which portion is the West Philippine Sea? Can you show us a map indicating the features and the limits of that area where we will be spending some of the budgets of the DND for consideration?
Mr. President, it's 200 nautical miles from our baseline, Mr. President. Those are the areas that the DND intends to bolster, Mr. President.
If you are saying 200 nautical miles from the archipelagic baseline, you're referring to the exclusive economic zone.
Correct, Mr. President.
The reason I'm raising this question, Mr. President, is that the lack of precise identification of the area where the people's money is supposed to be spent, parang ang mangyayari po parang yung flood control ngayon. Dahil po sa discrepancy in coordinates, ang dami billion po kasi ang natapon din na pera. If the DND says that the WPS is the EEZ, meron pong mas magandang definition yun. Sa Administrative Order Number 29 and Republic Act 12064 or the Maritime Zones Law, sinasabi po ron the WPS is Philippines maritime areas on the western side of the archipelago, including the Luzon Sea, as well as the waters around, within and adjacent to the Kalayaan Island Group and Bajo de Masinloc, also known as Scarborough Shoal. Tama po yun, Sir President?
Yes, correct, Mr. President.
Would you agree that under Administrative Number 29, the term Kalayaan Island Group refers to the area enclosed by boundaries identified under Section 1 of Presidential Decree Number 1596?
Tama po, Mr.
Yes.
President. Tama po kayo.
And you will also agree that under paragraph 574 of arbitral award in the South China Sea arbitration, the tribunal declared that the Philippines cannot apply boundaries to enclose the Spratly Islands or a portion thereof. Yes.
Yes, we agree. We agree with the arbitral award, Mr. President.
Ito po yung section po ng 1596, Mr. President, and paragraph 574 ng arbitral award. Magkalaban po talaga Sabi po ng arbitral award, Mr. President, and I quote, "In any event, however, even the Philippines could not declare archipelagic baselines surrounding the Spratly Islands. Article 47 of the Convention limits the use of archipelagic baselines to circumstances where within such baseline are included the main islands and an area in which the ratio of the area of the water to the area of the land, including atolls, is between 1:1 and 9:1. Question, is it obvious now that PD 1596 and paragraph 574 of the arbitral award, Mr. President, are incompatible? And therefore, you will agree that definition of the WPS in Administrative Order 29 had to be changed to make it compatible with the arbitral award, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, the Secretary replied that no, it's not incompatible because portions of the EEZ is also included in that, Mr. President.
We will go to that, Mr. President, but if you will care to consider yung Section 1 po ng Presidential Decree 1596 and the arbitral award, they are inconsistent and incompatible. Kasi po dito sa Article 2, Paragraph B ng Republic Act 12064, nire-define niya yung WPS. Ang definition na po rito ngayon ng naging batas na ito ay the maritime zones of the Philippines on the western side of the Philippines, on the Philippine archipelago, including the Luzon Sea and the territorial seas of Bao de Masinloc and the maritime features of the Calayan Island Group. Ngayon po, Mr. President, yung limits po ng West Philippine Sea, ang sabi po natin kanina is the 200 nautical limit of the EEZ. Are you saying that Kalayaan and other features are not part of the WPS, Mr. President?
Mr. President, the prevailing law is RA 9522. That is the one that they are following, Mr. President.
RA
9522. Republic Act 9522. Enacted in 2009, Mr. President.
Paano po yung Republic Act number 12064? 2012 po ito. This is the more recent law.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. President, maritime zones and the baselines are different matters, Mr. President.
Alam ko po yun, Mr. President. Pero kung pag-uusapan po natin na yung limit po ng West Philippine Sea ay yung ating exclusive economic zone, which is 200 nautical miles from our baseline, malinaw po na ang Kalayaan Island Group ay hindi po kasali sapagkat it is beyond the West Philippine Sea. Pwede po natin ipakita yung pangalawang mapa.
Well, Mr. President, what we are following insofar as the Kalayaan Group of Islands is RA 9522, which defines the baseline, Mr. President, of the country.
Yun nga po, Mr. President, sa baseline natin, kahit sa 9522, wala po doon yung Kalayaan Island Group.
Mr. President, nandoon po yung KIG, Mr. President, Kalayaan Island Group.
Pakita natin yung yung isa pa pong, ayan po, kayo na pong humanap kung nasaan yung KIG. Wala po eh.
Ito po, Mr. Section 2, Section 2A, the Kalayaan Island Group as constituted under Presidential Decree 1596. And letter B, Bajo de Masinloc, also known as Scarborough Shoal, Mr. President. Nandito ho siya sa 952.
Kasi po, Mr. President, sa Republic Act 12064 or the Maritime Zones Law, ito po yung ginagamit ninyo ngayon eh. Inalis po niya yung boundaries ng 1596 na in-enclose ang KIG. Tingnan po ninyo. Section 5 in relation to Section 18, yung term Kalayaan Island Group now refers only to certain high tide elevations and the respective territorial sea. Inalis po talaga eh.
Yeah. But Mr. President, when it comes to the Kalayaan Island Group, Mr. President, it's RA 9522.
Hindi po. Ang ating pong recent batas na po, yung RA 12064, it was enacted last year, November 7, 2024. So hindi po pwedeng manaig po yung sinasabi nyo dahil ito na po yung more recent na batas na ginawa po natin. So as it stands now, Mr. President, yung ating West Philippine Sea includes the maritime features of the KIG. Palagay natin. And that some of these features are separated by high seas. Kung mangyayari po yun, Mr. President, ang mangyayari talaga, ang WPS is a discontinuous and disjointed body of water.
But Mr. President, also in Section 3 defines the baselines, Mr. President. And it referred back to RA 9522, Mr. President. So, dinefine dito sa batas na ito, yung baseline ng ating bansa at prefer niya bumalik ho tayo sa 9522. So, hindi ho siya inconsistent, Mr. President. The maritime zones only define the maritime zones, kung saan po pwedeng dumaan yung barko, Mr. President. But in terms of the baseline, it refers back to 9522, which includes the Kalayaan Island Group, Mr. President.
Hindi nga po eh. Yung batas po na binabanggit natin na atin pong ipinasa last year, inalis niya na po yung KIG. Wala na po roon eh.
With all due respect, Mr. President, nandito ho kami nung we were discussing this law, and with all due respect, hindi ho ganun yung nangyari, Mr. President.
Kaya nga po, kung sakaling sabihin natin na ang WPS now will include the maritime features of the KIG, exactly how many features are we talking about here? Can you name and locate each of these features? Can you see us or can you show us the official map?
9 major islands, Mr. President. That is the, there are 9 major islands, Mr. President.
Doon po sa KIG?
Hindi lang po sa KIG, but yung mga features po sa...
Yun nga po, ang pinakamahirap dito po, dahil wala pa po tayong official map ng West Philippine Sea, hindi po natin madidescribe lahat ang features. At kung meron pong isang mang Pilipino ang naaring mabuhay doon. I'm asking these questions, Mr. President, to make certain that we know what we are talking about when we say West Philippine Sea. Nung po kasing ito'y unang nabanggit nung nasa mababang kapulungan ako, dahil nga po sa hindi pagkakaintindi sa isyong ito, nung sinabi ko na ang West Philippine Sea tayo lang ito. But in the context of international law, hindi po talaga alam pa. Ang alam po nila ay yung South China Sea. Can you imagine, Mr. President, the discomfort, for example, of a passenger in a plane about his safety or her safety, kung marinig niya yung pilot at saka yung control tower, nagdidebate sila kung nasan siya lugar. Sabi ng pilot, I am here in the West Philippine Sea. Hindi maintindihan ngayon nung control tower. Ganun po kasi, after more than 16 years or maybe 12 years since 2012, nung ipasa po natin yung RA 12064, the Philippines has not applied with International Hydrographic Organization for the adoption of the name West Philippine Sea. Yun po kasi yung naging problema yata natin, Mr. President. Bakit po kaya?
Well, Mr. President, I think that question will be best referred to the Department of Foreign Affairs, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, in proper time we will do that. But I guess considering that the West Philippine Sea is one of those areas that even our national defense officials are protecting or try to protect, kailangan po alam natin kung ano yung ating gustong proteksyonan. Ang sabi pa nga po ng ibang mga advocates, WPS, atin to. Mga ganun, di ba? China, umalis ka sa WPS. Even our president said in his statements, West Philippine Sea is worth dying for. We'd like to see and would like to know, Mr. President, when we send our children and grandchildren to war protecting the West Philippine Sea, alam natin kung nasan talaga. What are the exact coordinates? Ngayon po talagang ang labo talaga eh. Parang sinabi mo, yung Pasig River, some portion of Taguig, some portion of Pasig, and some portions of another municipality. Hindi mo alam kung saan nagsimula, kung saan napuputol. Maybe we can ask the Executive Department to be precise in its identification of the features and limits of the West Philippine Sea. Kasi po, para yung mga ghost missions or even ghost budgets, kasi nangyari nga po sa flood control, they were all using several applications. Hindi sila, magkakaiba po eh. Sabi pa nila, geotag, real time. Pero kung tingnan, talagang wala yung mga flood control projects. So dito po, ganun din. Kailangan matukoy natin. Speaking of maritime features, Mr. President, let me refer back to the map identifying its features. Ito pong, yung balik mo nga dun sa pangalawang mapa. Ayan. You will agree, Mr. President, that based on that map, Vietnam occupies 21 features, China 9, and the Philippines 9.
The Philippines 11, Mr. President.
O 11 siguro. So 21 features for China, for Vietnam, 9 for China, Philippines 11.
Mr. President.
What is the policy of the national defense regarding Vietnam?
Well, Mr. President, in the case of Vietnam, Vietnam is not actively trying to add more areas to their territory, Mr. President. Unlike China, Mr. President.
21 na kasi nakuha niya eh.
So that's why in the case of Vietnam, meron ho tayong mga trust building activities and diplomatic activities with
So
with
pare-pareho
Vietnam.
tayong claimants dito, Mr. President. Are we going to force Vietnam out of these features?
With Vietnam, Mr. President, we have open communication lines with them, and these communication lines will also discuss this type of issues, Mr. President.
What about with China, Mr. President?
Well, with China, it's a different case because we all know that China is trying to claim our territories even within the inclusive economic zone, Mr. President. Nevertheless, diplomatic approaches is still the approach that we are endeavoring towards China, Mr.
Pero
President.
sabi natin kanina, Mr. President, yung open and actual negotiations ay ating ginagawa, and I've even asked kung magkano ang budget natin dito sa actual negotiation, hindi lang naman megaphone.
The budgets are in the DFA, Mr. President, and the amounts are not significant because this is part of their diplomatic activities, Mr. President.
Hindi natin sila mapapaalis at hindi naman yun ang policy natin, Mr. President. So if that is the case, ang Vietnam ba, ang China, ay paalisin tayo sa mga inoccupy nating features?
Sa Vietnam, wala po. Wala pong ganun. In fact, we have good relations with Vietnam. Marami nga hong Pinoy na teachers nagtuturo po sa Vietnam. With China, is a different case, as you know, Mr. President.
Sa China is a different case. So, maaari tayong puwersahing umalis, Mr. President.
Mr. President, we still the approach of our policymakers is to continue to engage, to continue to open the diplomatic channels with China and with other countries, Mr. President. And for me, that is the best approach, Mr. President.
But forcing us out from these occupied territories is a potential threat, Mr. President.
It's a potential threat, Mr. President.
If that is so, Mr. President, has the Philippines filed a protest with the United Nations Security Council as required under Article 2 of the United Nations Charter?
Well, Mr. President, to answer your question directly, no. But to give the reasons on why that policy was undertaken, the best department to answer that is the Department of Foreign Affairs, Mr. President.
Kasi po kung ang sagot natin is no, Mr. President, then the threat is more imagined than real.
Well, Mr. President, China is has veto powers in the National Security Council, Mr. President. So yeah, that's why we have to strategize very carefully, Mr. President.
Kanina po, Mr. President, sa aking pagtatanong, I was trying to differentiate po kasi dahil nga sa sigalot sa West Philippine Sea, ang dami pong misunderstanding dyan, ang daming misconception. Kaya po kung minsan ay hindi nagkakasundo ang iba't ibang mga mamamayan natin. For example po, yung pinag-uusapan lang dito sa tinatawag nating West Philippine Sea na hanggang ngayon hindi natin talaga malagyan ng exact coordinates, ano-anong mga features niyan, ano-anong mga forma niyan, para sa ganun kung tayo makikipag-away talaga at makikipagdigma, alam mo naman po natin ang ating ipinakikipaglaban. Kasi po, ang pinag-uusapan po pagka sovereign rights lang, ito po ay mga functional jurisdiction over areas that are not territories. Katulad po ng binabanggit nating exclusive economic zone. Kasama na po yung contiguous zone, yung continental shelf, and even the extended continental shelf. Hindi po mga teritoryo to eh. Napagkakamalan po na territory, kaya nagkakaroon po ng mahabang pagtatalo. Sovereign rights, Mr. President, is different from territorial sovereignty. Iba po yung sovereign rights sa sovereignty. Yung Estado po, katulad natin, have full sovereignty rights and jurisdiction over our territory. So we can apply our entire range of laws, whether constitutional, administrative, civil, criminal, or commercial, to all persons and properties and activities within our territory. subject to the rights of innocent passage, sea lane passage, open sky passage, and sovereign diplomatic immunities. Ang kaibayo po nito, in contrast, yun pong mga tinatawag nating maritime rights. Halimbawa po, itong binanggit natin kanina, contiguous zone, EEZ, continental shelf. Ang may apply lang po natin dito ay mga batas o regulations relating to customs, taxation, immigration, and sanitation. Sa exclusive economic zone po, Mr. President, and continental shelf, even the extended continental shelf, ang mag-a-apply lang po rito ay batas tungkol sa energy, fisheries, and maritime genetic resource, exploration and exploitation of artificial structures, marine research, pollution control, seabed pipelines, and cables. So kailangan po kasing may paliwanag ito in defense of what we perceive as West Philippine Sea. Yun pong maritime rights sa tubig lang, hindi po territory na kagaya po ng ating gustong ipaliwanag na mabuti. Para sa ganon, ay alam po natin kung ano ang ating pinag-uusapan, saan po natin gagamitin ang budget, at kung tayo po ay makikipagyera, alin-alin po ang dapat nating ilaban na saganang atin, Mr. President. So, salamat po muli, Mr. President, sa panahon pong ibinigay ninyo. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming
Mr.
salamat.
Sponsor, sa inyong panahon at pasensya.
Maraming
Thank you very
salamat
much.
po, Senator Marc0leta. At
Thank you.
nakikinig po ang inyong kababayan na taga-Tarlac rin, si Secretary Teodoro. At siya po ay siniseryoso niyo po ang inyong mga mungkahi at suggestion. So maraming salamat po.